Hello, hello. Welcome back, number one podcast. Again, I always have to say this. I'm clearly not the number one podcast in the world. The whole point of this is talking to people that have gone from being no one NO1 to number one NO1. So I don't think that this would be complete if I didn't bring in my old friend, and I'm really excited to bring him in. His name is Ryan Katz. He's a really interesting guy, super duper fucking creative. Has had a lot of success in a bunch of different domains. He and I first met each other. This is the late '90s. There was an organization, not to be confused with my branding thing, CWO, Catch World Order. Before that, the first CWO that I was involved in was this independent wrestling promotion based here in Colorado, the Central Wrestling Organization, if I remember correctly. And Ryan was a big part of it. I mean, I know he was on doing booking. He helped me come up with my gimmick. I had this gimmick that I was Mo Bush, the Tantric Torpedo. The Tantric Torpedo was all classic Ryan Katz. So without any further ado, I want to bring him in here. Super interesting guy. I want to share. He was a producer for WWE. I know he was a high school wrestler. And he's done, like, he's a really good rapper. He's done all kinds of crazy shit. Really going to be a fun talk. Super excited to bring him in. So let's do. Hey, what's up, Ryan?
What's going on? How are you, man? Good to see you.
Dude, I mean, we were kind of talking before the roll, and dude, it's probably been 20 years.
I mean, over probably at this point, which is 2022, which is wild because I think of all of my memories and all of my things, and I'm like, yeah, it was a few years ago. And you're like, no, that was like 15 or 18 or 19 or 20 years ago. And you're like, that just doesn't even make sense at this point.
Yeah, I mean, man, time really does fly when you're having fun. And you are like, okay, so I knew you as Ringside Ryan, but now you got this smiley thing, which definitely goes with having fun. So I mean, I'd like to just address the first thing, probably what at least most people who are watching this know you for, is all your production stuff with NXT.
Yeah.
And what you had with Dusty Rhodes, I think, was very similar, obviously different, but similar, like, to what I had with Billy Robinson. And I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about your journey. Like, first of all, what you did for WWE, which is like fucking awesome. Like, you were a big shot, which I love that. You do. No, you're honestly probably, from the Colorado scene, the guy who's had the most success in the business. So
Thanks, man.
I mean, that's my opinion. I think it's fact. I don't even think it's just an opinion. So I'd love to hear that journey. I know some of it, like going through XPW and that craziness.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear, like, how you started in high school wrestling and made it all the way to the heights of the biggest freaking wrestling organization that's ever existed.
So I grew up always being a fan, of course. And for me, being from Chicago, and although not from the city, from the suburbs, the team that had me hooked was the Road Warriors. From the spikes to the face paint, and then to Precious Paul Ellering as the mouthpiece. As someone as a child who was like a young Alex P. Keaton, the whole vibe of him with his Wall Street Journal and then having these two warriors with them, it was just something that had me hooked. And for as long as I could remember, it was just what I loved, what I wanted to watch, what I wanted to be a part of. And as I got older and went through high school, instead of going to parties, it was I wanted to watch wrestling. And instead of doing something on a Monday night, is I want to watch primetime wrestling. It was just always watching the program. Saturday afternoon, tuning into the Mothership, baby, talking about Dusty Rhodes, absolutely. And just, it was this just fascination. But as someone who is small, I mean, I was a very tiny guy. I mean, smallest in my school, like one of the smallest in my grade always. It was never something I thought I'd be able to pursue. It was just something I thought I would love and watch as a fan. And because that wasn't going to work for me. I figured I'd pursue a career as a rapper because, where else would I fit in? If I don't fit in wrestling, I probably fit in rapping. So like it was this thing. So as I got into college, I knew that I was loving this. And I started to realize that maybe I can get into broadcasting and maybe I can get into commentary. So I went to college with the pursuit of becoming a game show host. That is really what my original career ambition was to become a game show host. And I met Mark Summers once on my way to Colorado, on my way to a ski trip. And I met him in Colorado in the Denver airport. It was Stapleton at the time, the original Denver airport. And I ended up walking up to him. It's like, I think I was 12 or 13 at the time. I think it was junior high. And I walked up to him and started asking him questions about how do you pursue this career? And he told me about broadcast journalism and this and that. So like from that point on, it was like, oh, I'm going to go to college and get into broadcast journalism. And then when I got into broadcast journalism, I realized that maybe I can turn this into the pro wrestling side of things. And I started in college at the University of Colorado, like having my projects be pro wrestling based. And while everyone in my class was doing these hard news stories, it was the era of John Bonet. I'm sitting here doing projects on pro wrestling and nudity in the school library and weird just stories of trying to push the boundaries, get creative and see what could be done. The interesting thing is, man, I wish back then I had the social media and the way to put things out and be creative that kids and teens that just people have nowadays, because I feel now I want to start creating original content. And I'm like, I'm a 45-year-old man. I'm not going to be doing dances and TikTok
Right.
things. I need to find another way to vent myself creatively, which I'm finding for myself. But man, when I was in my prime, I'm like, if I was able to distribute the fun stuff I was working on doing, creating, playing around with, joking around with, all the things that me and my buddies were doing, I can't imagine where all of us would have been on different routes. But obviously the world takes you where it's meant to take you. So I digress.
Dude, no, but really, social media would have been made for you. And that's actually, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because you mentioned a couple things that resonated with me. I've always been a lanky guy, which also goes against pro wrestling from our era. I mean, if you weren't 6'4" and 250 pounds,
yep.
I mean, I was doing dumb shit like doing steroids and shit, just trying to fucking
bulk up
to get to that where, I mean, I had tryouts with WWE and shit, but like I could never really quite get there. And now you got motherfuckers like Zack Sabre Jr. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, like shit, things have changed so much. And like now, like, especially because you did so much work with NXT, you see these smaller guys like Adam Cole, and they're like main event. And these are tiny guys.
Yeah, I mean,
like, it's amazing. It's just, we missed that.
Absolutely. Because even when I got in, you brought up the CWO and when creating that with Dan Magnus and working on that, I never thought that I would be a wrestler. I always wanted to train to learn how to be a wrestler, but I considered I was doing commentary. I was managing at best, and I'd take bumps as a manager. And it wasn't something, not because I couldn't do it or couldn't take the training, but it was just like, realistically, I wasn't going to have a career at 5'5", 155 pounds, going and doing it. And I also realized that like the wear and tear on my body to do that every single, 3-4 days a week for the rest of your life, or for as long as your career can take you, it is a burden, and it's difficult, and you got to have something in you to be able to do so. So I always thought the managerial and then wrestle the special matches was my ticket. Yeah. But then when I did get to NXT on the behind the scenes side level, it would always cross my mind of, man, if I would have pursued my career as a wrestler, like knowing my work ethic, knowing that I did have a knack or a talent for doing stuff or pick stuff up, and just didn't try to dedicate myself in that specific way to being the best wrestler. I tried to dedicate myself to being the best wrestling performer on different aspects, and being versatile and have talents and be able to do a whole bunch of different things, whatever being asked of me. But it always crossed my mind, what if? But then in these last few years, as I started to fool around with some friends and a little thing that we did, a little variety show and talent show we did where I did a magic trick and I got chopped by Oni Lorcan repetitively. And when I started being around some of the other, trainers, coaches, talent, and playing around and maybe getting a little rough here and there, is like, oh, the world's changed, and man, they hit hard nowadays, and I couldn't do it. So like all of those years of thinking, well, maybe what if I should have? No, man. Like wrestling's hard nowadays, man. They're hard. They're beating each other up, man.
I see these spots, and it is pretty amazing what they're like. I especially like. Okay, I'm just gonna be real. I'm sure you're sick of hearing this kind of shit from your perspective. But I really loved the old NXT. This 2.0, I'm just like, I don't watch it. But the old NXT, the black and gold, the stuff that you were involved with, dude, that shit was fucking good. Like, I had kind of fallen out because I do, with the Scientific Wrestling Project that I've been doing, we've been doing so much shoot. It's all MMA, all jiu-jitsu, all those guys where I've been marketing to for 20 years.
Yeah.
But man, what you guys were doing, and to your point about it being fucking brutal and hard, I mean, I was amazed to watch those matches and watch those guys, and it was just. And you
comes
mentioned
down to this.
Lorcan, that guy's a stud. I really enjoyed it.
Comes down to heart and passion. Like you talk about that era of what it was, and it was career wrestlers, it was lifers who had put in the grind on the indie circuit and were pushing through to make a living for themselves, not in the spotlight. So all of these guys that have been going for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, finally getting their shot to shine and to be in that spotlight and take that spotlight, catch that ball, run, take it to the end zone, spike it, and make the most out of every opportunity they were given. Being around the energy, I mean, that was years of people putting forth dedication, sacrifice, determination, hard work, perseverance. It was all just this endless array of just trying to excel and exceed past your potential, raise the bar, and do it again.
Well, what I loved about it, there was so much I loved about it. I mean, I loved the work rate. The work rate to me was like a real fucking fight. To me, that's what pro wrestling. Yeah, sure, there's the fun stuff and the crazy stuff and all that, but ultimately, when it boils down to it, we're doing theatrical John Wick. We're trying to make fucking real fights, but they're just like super powered, like crazy shit. And they would, man, every fucking match for like 5 years was like amazing. Like you never get that. And
it was the go-to that takeovers were the greatest show of the year every time they aired, and it was how are they going to top it? And somehow it got topped.
It's fucking great. I mean, it really was great. And I'm glad that you guys, that's forever evergreen. People could go watch it. It's like, that's a fantastic. I think it will become, when we have another one of these conversations in another 20 years, that shit's going to be the standard. It's going to be the cult that everybody looks back and is like, holy shit, that was fucking insane. And you should definitely be proud for being a part of it. Now, that's kind of what I'd like to talk about a little bit, because So I don't want to brush over the XPW because that's some crazy shit that I think would make for some good stories. But so tell me a little bit, like you were like the first employee or something of NXT. Is that right?
Yeah, and definitely, I'm going to have to keep some of this pretty vague right now. But first employee there, and I got to work under Dusty. And it was, you brought up the opportunity of being under a learning tree of Billy Robinson. And to spend, I got 2 years with the guy, and they were amazing. And when he did pass, I couldn't believe how it affected me. Like, I was actually surprised, having not had a large extended family in my life. I hadn't had a lot of deaths, or if I did, it was someone I wasn't that necessarily close to. That sad, yes, but like it didn't have that impact. And man, the impact in the void was just indescribable at that point. But being able to just learn from him and learn about, creating a body of work that you can be proud of, learning that, like, from his philosophy, the difference between good and great is just time. Like you could be great, and if you last for a year, you weren't so great. But if you're good and you last for 10, you're probably pretty great. Like,
Yeah.
Interesting, different perspective. I learned that you should never go roller skating in a herd of buffaloes. You could take that for what it's worth, but I learned that. Like, uh, I, I got nothing but nothing but good things to say about the experience. I mean, I got to be involved with, as you just talked about, one of the greatest eras of professional wrestling.
Really,
And to be working with legendary names. And when you go look down the list of all the people that were involved in this crew, the fact that my name is going to be that name that's not known, that's not famous, that wasn't a superstar, that wasn't a legend, that wasn't a Hall of Famer, but I got to do it, and I got to be a part of it, and I got to live it, run it, be it. And I have nothing but admiration, pride, honor, respect, and all of the best adjectives for my time there, because I got to learn, I got to grow, I got to entertain, I got to touch, impact, inspire, motivate, and just be a part of amazing people's lives. Let's talk about this over there, because I'll be honest, I can't really get into specific stories and anecdotes about time, but at the same time, it's all about the people that I got to work with. One of the coolest things at NXT for me was that we had people from all over the world constantly coming in these doors, many of whom didn't speak any English to begin with. And then after 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years in a program, to know that they're delivering promos and acting and performing at peak levels and being able to do what they came here to do. And that's make an impact or make a statement. And that's special. And then knowing that when they're struggling to try to figure things out, that you get to be involved. And sometimes it's just a motivating speech. Sometimes it's just a hand on the shoulder and a little bit of encouragement. But to know that you could have that impact on someone's life where they could now go and make their dreams come true, that they can go make their family proud, make themselves proud. I mean,
yeah,
that's the special thing that really the memories are always going to be about.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like, that is truly epic. I mean, if you're going to be involved with any wrestling project, that, in my opinion, it's just, it doesn't get better. And like, for me personally, you know, like, beyond the fact that the work rate was good, it was more realistic product 90% of the time. The guys, I know they were just fucking like giving their all. I could just like, I mean, literally, holy shit, all the time. And, you know, but beyond that, you know, you guys gave a lot of homage to Catch as Catch Can too. Like, you know, I mean, you know,
Thatcher's debut was exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah. And he'd come to some of our camps, and like, and, you know, William Regal being involved, who, you know, is in that kind of lineage or whatever, coming under Marty Jones, and Marty Jones trained with Billy. And like, I just loved everything about the product. And I'm so grateful that you guys did that. And like you said, you gave people a chance. Now, you mentioned people that were from other countries, but like, I'm going back to this glass ceiling that guys like you and I bumped up against. I mean, there had to be wrestlers that you met that were not that much bigger than you.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. From Johnny Gargano to Adam Cole's, not that much big. It's taller, but not necessarily bigger. Like, they broke through and they made it. And it's incredible when you see them main events, and you do get that little bit of emotion, and you do catch that tear. You're choking it back, thinking, man, it's awesome. It means something. It is meaningful. I mean, I remember going back to when Rey Mysterio won his championship at Mania, that like, I was choked up. Like, this wrestling's not real. No, it's real. Like, the emotion's real. What people put behind it, the work, the sacrifice, all of that aspect is what the realness is. It's the emotion. It's the backstory. It's what's going on as they try to pursue. It's the struggle. It's the doubt, the inner conflict, the lack of self-esteem, the too much self-esteem, the ego getting to your head, blowing yourself up to where you crash and burn. I mean, it's all of that human drama that comes together and creates the story that you see, but that's all backed by real emotion.
Yeah, and so I want to get to, because you had an incredible career there, and like, let's be real, WWE is known to be a bit of a revolving door. One day you're not working there, the next day you're working there, the next day you're not working there. Like, so I do hope that if that's in your dreams, that it happens again, because clearly, you doing that, being the first employee at NXT, like all that stuff is just so fucking cool. And I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I want to talk about what you're going to be doing going forward, or some of the projects that you're interested in. But
We want to go back a little bit.
You take control of this, because this shit is some of the craziest shit ever. But I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit about your time in XPW, because man, that was like some Gigi Allen level shit going on there, man, in wrestling. Like, that was some crazy shit. And you were in the mix with that too. So, anything that you feel is not incriminating or like is totally cool, I'd love to get your perspective on your time there.
So once again, I look back at my life and I live no regrets, man. I love it. If I was ashamed or didn't believe it was something I should talk about, it's probably something I wouldn't do. I had amazing years there, and once again, like, everyone has their own path and their own story and their own interactions, and there's been stories in the documentaries and all these things that talk about some of the more extreme moments. But like, for me, Rob Black gave me the chance to go be creative, to go try things, experiment, and just go live a ridiculous life in my young to mid 20s that was somewhat extraordinary. I was taken care of. I was paid well. I had health benefits. I got to wrestle on cool shows. I was touring at that point with another name who's become like a name he shall not mention after recent PR scandals and now serving time. But like, it's crazy. I can't talk about those stories of my life anymore that were interesting and fun.
Your whole life is fucking redacted, man.
But at the same time, man, we did some fun, crazy stuff. I mean, the extreme nature of lighting people on fire, jumping off of 20-foot cages, being slammed off of a 30-foot tower into a kiddie pool of raw sewage, having the idea to shoot a tranquilizer dart at someone who then fell off a 40-foot scaffold into a ring covered in tables that exploded to the point where you couldn't even know if the person was safe for probably about 90 seconds after the stunt, because of clearing out the tables, the smoke, the debris, and all of what it was. The fact that when audiences came to XPW shows, there was a feeling that someone may die. It made it real. Absolutely extreme in the true level of the word, and not just because it was the X in the first word of the acronym. It was an extreme environment. When I was involved in our 2-ring war game style cage, and that was this homemade cage that our warehouse worker named Ralph spent a week making inside the warehouse, the adult video warehouse, by hand, by himself, that was never ever assembled officially until the day of the show, I believe.
Wow.
And it was supposed to have the giant roof. And me and Angel had planned all of these spots to take place on the roof of this monstrosity that was a legit 20 or 22 feet high. And I believe that was from the apron even, not even from the floor. And when that match was going on and they couldn't get after like an hour and 20 minutes of setup, and I think it was probably 12:15 at the Grand Olympic Auditorium when the match finally started, and they got one little piece of cage on the top of it, and every time that people were getting thrown into the cage, it would sway, and you would just hear the audience with the whoa, because they thought it was going to collapse on them. It was just this unreal feeling. And then Angel climbs up to the top of the cage and he hits his spot and he taunts me, and I'm thinking, wait, we're still going up there? And we did our thing. And it's funny because he's up there and I climb up and I finally make it, and I take my first step and I start hearing pins pop from what was like connecting the cage to the things. And you see both me and Angel on the video, like we both go go down to our knees. I'm getting excited. I pull the earbuds out of my ears. We both go down to our knees, scared out of our gourds right there. And we generally fought mostly on our knees at that point, occasionally getting up, but being very careful. So then it comes to the climactic moment of this match where it's time for me to throw Angel off the cage. And for some reason, Chaos, my tag team partner, my team member, starts climbing up to us. And we're like, don't come up. It can't support you. It can't support the weight. Don't do it. And he just keeps coming. And he's coming. So finally, I'm like, Angel, man, we don't got time to spot this. Sorry. And I just chuck him. And he goes and he crashes through the 2 tables on 2 tables, the 4 tables stack, crash, burn, explosion of table, particles everywhere. And Chaos is still just coming up and standing there. And I'm like, I don't want to be up here with him either. I don't know what he's planning on doing. So at that point, the security guards and medical was all grabbing Angel at that point, and they pick him up. And I just went for my leap on top of all of them, bowling pinned them all out of the way, flew through the air 20 feet in the Grand Olympic Auditorium in one of my favorite highlights of my life, where I believe I can fly. And once again, a reference to someone who shouldn't be mentioned. But man, and just these ultimate moments. To promote, like I just got so excited I lost my train of thought. Just XPW in general, the chaos. Let's go to the Vic and New Jack, like the 30-foot scaffold. It was talked about on Dark Side of the Ring. You've seen it over and over. Everyone understands. If you're a wrestling fan, you've seen the clip of Vic Grimes almost die. Few things that happened on that night that are absolutely crazy. Well, let's go even rewind. Let's promote the show. XPW's way of promotion. What did me and Rob Black do to promote that show? We took one of our older camcorders, attached it to a rope, made a little pulley on a broomstick we had, went up to the roof of our building and chucked the camera off the building, pulled it before it hit the ground, and we're like, there's your free fall. And that was kind of one of our little promotions.
That's nice. It
was pretty fun. We didn't break the camera. It was amazing. We pulled it off, but like it was a ballsy move. Night of the show. We get to the show, and Vic Grimes kind of walks up to me as I'm in the arena, and he's like, Smiley, do me a favor, walk up there and tell me what you see. So I climb up the scaffold, and this is my first time on a scaffold. So as once again, as a Road Warrior fan, I mean, the scaffold match is epic. I mean, this is what it's all about. So I go up, and I never realized how unsturdy they were. Looking at the monstrosity of what they are, you think there's going to be some stability. No stability.
Yeah, so and Grimes is a big dude too, so you're putting a heavy weight on the top of a wall.
Oh yeah, and once again, I'm probably 150, 160 pounds at this point, and I'm thinking this is scary and unstable. I walk across, I look down, okay. I come back down, climb down, and Vic's like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "The scaffold's not over the ring." And he's like, "Yeah," and we're like, "Oh," so. Before doors opened, we had like everyone in the crew come in and push the ring into place. And I sit and go, if we never made that push, like.
Good thing. Well, that's smart that he fucking went up and spotted. That's covering your ass, man. Like,
and that was a key. Like, once again, like you could pull up all of the craziness and the negativity of the XPW stunts and the spectacle of what it was. But I would personally go around and say that I was involved in some major stunts, and I usually tried to take the safety precautions that were necessary to make a dangerous situation the least dangerous I could make it. So if I was going through fire, I did do some stuff with flame retardant sprays on my clothing, and I did pre-soak stuff so that I had some sort of underlying protection. When it came to my getting sidewalk slammed off the 30-foot tower, we did this in a bull ring, so in a dirt field. So I did take shims and leveled the tables and taped the tables together so that they wouldn't slide apart. And we were doing dangerous stuff. I remember me and Angel originally had the intent to do a Falcon's arrow. He was going to put me up for the suplex and go spin it down and take the front step and go take the ass pump as we crashed through the table. And white trash Johnny Webb from under, because we were up on the tower, and we're looking at it and planning everything out. And he looks up and he yells at us. He's like, what the hell are you guys doing? Why don't you just do a sidewalk slam? We're like, we don't want to do a sidewalk slam. A sidewalk slam is stupid. What a stupid move. He's like, it's not stupid from 30 feet high. He's like, all you got to do is step off and there's no, the margin of error is less. You're not going to rotate. You're not going to this. If he's holding you, one step, go straight down in. And we took his advice, and it ended up being, I talk about another one of the most epic moments of my life, to go take a 30-foot bump in the outdoor arena, looking up. And I always say it was like looking up at the stars, like reverse hyperspeed, where like everything does go slow-mo for that minute. Like if you watch the clip, it's like 1.5 seconds of, it's probably 1 second of going off and hitting it in that whole moment. It probably felt like 9 in my mind, because I vividly remember the moment with Angel where we're, I'll call it halfway, where we both kind of squeezed each other with that, like, we're going to miss and we're going to get hurt. And then right when we both had that like squeeze and like talking, like boom, crash, boom, sewage goes flying, everything. And it's like, it was awesome. And then to get backstage eventually, and I'm throwing up because of the sewage mixture, and everything's going crazy. And then the dirt sheets and all of that are reporting what a scumbag Rob Black is for using raw sewage in his match. And it's like, you guys are like, it's funny because in a world where you're intending to work an audience, the audience always gets really upset when you work them. So like, like that's part of the magic and the fun. But like, there's this reputation. I mean, I got to be honest, for all these years, like, come on, like, my health was never in danger in that, except for me wanting to go off a 30-foot tower and my mom thinking I'm crazy. But other than that, I've gotten out alive. Thank you.
I got to say, dude, like, because I mean, I'm jacked for kind of going the other route. I went into pro wrestling because I was dating a stripper at the time. I don't know if you remember. And she thought wrestling was cool. And I could not back then. This is the late 90s. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't connected. I couldn't get booked in like grappling or MMA or anything like that. That's what I'm comfortable with, right? And I couldn't get booked. And so that's how I found my way into CWO and doing my weird gimmick and all that kind of stuff, which again had the touch of your genius on it. So
you mentioned before, I want to give credit also to Steve Scarborough, the lethal litigator, because I feel he was probably involved with some of those creative decisions, and my memory is a little fuzzy, but I feel like Tantric Torpedo could have been a lot of him as well. So I do want to give him credit because we once again had a team of creative people that got to just try things, experiment. And while we weren't the biggest, the baddest, or the best, we were that in Denver. And like, if this was a different time and era, because this was the beginning of the internet and video on the internet. And I got to be honest, I was on that cusp, and I was streaming with the Real Player, and I had bought my Real Player encoder, and I was getting into all the tech of putting on these little shows and all that as well. But it was just like a couple of years too early, a few years ahead of its time, which I got to be honest has been a common trend in my life with a lot of the stuff I've done, that like the things I'm in, pushing or trying, generally are a few years before they hit. So it's cool that I'm ahead of the trend.
Is it that, or is it because you're pushing and trying and nobody was doing it, and because you push so hard? That's some of the things that I've noticed with the things that I'm doing, because now I notice there's a subculture, and I think that I have some responsibility for it. Like you have responsibility for innovating pieces in the game. Now there's like this move towards a lot more shoot. Like people are really liking this idea. Now I think there's a lot of pressure also from MMA and UFC and stuff to create that kind of product. But at the same time, like, dude, I find so many interesting commonalities, even though we took totally different paths. Like, because I went to see you. Originally I went to see you as a film student. I was in the same class as Trey Parker and Matt Stone. They were like, I think 2 or 3 years older than me. But that's the kind of shit I loved. And I loved Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman was the real reason I decided to I listened to my girlfriend at that time and was like, okay, I'm going to do this because I think Andy Kaufman's cool. I'll give it a spin. And I had way more success in that than I ever in pro wrestling than I ever did in competitive grappling or any of that, in martial arts or anything like that. Now, the thing that's interesting to me is that, because I also was roommates at CU with a guy who now actually is the guy who runs Thrasher magazine. His name's Michael Burnett. And he was like a huge influence on me, but we were watching all those old skateboard videos, right? Like constantly. And I wasn't really into skating that much. I mean, as much as the next guy, but it wasn't my passion like it was for him. But I started being like, dude, they're just filming everything they fucking do. They film everything they do. They're creating their own like ecosystem of stars. And they're, so I did a very similar thing. So before social media, I'm working out with these guys like Billy Robinson and Carl Gotch, these guys that nobody else seemed to be able to get to. And I just had the foresight to fucking film it before everybody started doing Instagram and reels and all this shit. Yeah. And so, I mean, I really feel like, I mean, you've had so much crazy success. You came up from just being a total fan, fought against the stereotypes of size and all that, and you've had a huge impact on the game. And before
real quick, just based on motivation and inspiration, just to give perspective to that grind. In 1999, I had my first interview with WWE for a production assistant job. I went out to Connecticut. Had an interview. The first phase of the interview with HR went fantastic. Then they brought me to the production studio for phase 2 to see if I was going to get the job. And they determined at that point that they knew I wanted to be an on-air character at that point, and I should go get experience and then go try back. That's when I went back and eventually started CWO with Dan and began the career. So in 1999 was the first interview.
Wow.
In 2002, I sent letters in, got formally rejected. Back as an intern when I was in college, I interned for CBS Television in Chicago under the weatherman Dave Price, who ended up becoming a national weatherman for the CBS Early Show. So I used to get letters of recommendation from him, send them in. I, over the course of many years, so from probably then 99 to 2010, had gotten 3 formal rejection letters from WWE. One time with the Dave Price letter of recommendation. Another time, Scott Hudson, former WCW commentator, gave me some letters of recommendation from work I was doing. Another random one. All of these rejections. In 2012, I got offered a talent deal. Everything was great. My dream was coming true, and I was on top of the world until the day after I got my FedEx. All of a sudden, I read on the internet that the guy who hired me got fired. And I go, oh, gosh, this isn't good, because this has actually happened to me a couple times in my life. Coming out of college in that same 1999-ish, 98, 99 time, I had a lead, and I was potentially going to get a job with WCW working on their hotline and internet on the breakthrough of the internet. And the woman who was hiring me got transferred to Cartoon Network, and the job opportunity went away. In the 2000s, I was supposed to be a contestant on Deal or No Deal.
I remember seeing that. I saw that.
And I went through this whole audition. Everything was great. I was in, and I was just waiting on my date to get booked. And all of a sudden, a month went by, and I never got a call. 2 months went by, and I'm like, well, that's strange. I should have. I find out my casting producer got fired, and they scrapped his files.
Wow.
So my hiring manager gets fired, and I'm thinking the writing's on the wall. 2 more days later, it comes up that FCW is shutting down, and I'm like, oh no. But we're still moving forward. I'm working on the contract. I have my lawyer going through some stuff, just trying to take care of the details of the contract. And then I get the call when I'm waiting for my medical date of, we're rescinding the offer. And I'm like, wow, that easy. Crash and burn. It's over. And I remember specifically when the call came, I was so upset, angry, whatever it was. But I also knew at that point I was pretty broke, and I thought this was like, I had made my moment where I was like, man, I'm out of the broke house, and I'm finally gonna make it in life. And I remember just taking my phone and throwing it at my couch, because I knew I couldn't throw it at a wall because I couldn't break my phone, but I needed to throw it because I was just feeling that. And I remember throwing it and picking it up and just saying to myself, well, it's time to get back to work. And immediately that same day, I started building a new website, creating a new character, started doing all of the stuff necessary to create content, to push, persevere, and stay persistent with the idea that I knew where I was meant to be, and I was going to go get there. And I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to quit, because I knew that no dream is too big if you never, ever quit going for it.
Dude, that is awesome. So let's say from, wow. Okay. Because I want to say 1999, because that was like the first like real, like, hey, shit, man, this could really go. when did you get hired for NXT?
I got hired in 2013 officially, which was a funny story as well. So
almost 15 years
of pushing,
of just fucking eating it and saying, I'm gonna fucking make my dream. I'm gonna fucking go. You can't stop me.
And in that time, you know, I mean, it's funny because like you start to see the story gets repetitive of the people that have success in this. You start hearing the common thread of I lived in my car, I didn't have a home, like because it's a real reality. And that even coming from a great background, and my parents were absolutely supportive, but that doesn't mean that when you go push for a dream that they're going to fund your support. They can be emotionally supportive. They can be behind you. They can help you when you're.
Listen, I'm not going to give you money to fall 30 feet into fucking sewage, dude. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
I
ended up living in a client's office in like, what was that? Probably 2008. So like after probably 2010, nine or 10. So after the recession kind of started. So essentially I was running a DVD authoring business, post-production. I was generally doing a lot of wrestling titles for Big Vision Entertainment was one of my clients, as well as some movie studios and some other various things.
Because you were out in LA at that time.
Correct. Living in LA at that point. And all of a sudden, from having some success and doing well, in 1 week's time, I had 2 companies pretty much go bankrupt and lost everything. And one of those clients, I mean, Big Vision, Houston Kurtis, was good enough to let me stay at his office while they were working things out and make things happen. And I just, it was funny because I'd get there and I lived while living at that office. I lived in a way that like people wouldn't know I was living at the office. You know, I had my blanket and my pillow, and I would generally be up working from 6 a.m. If the minute anyone walked in the door, it was just like I got to work early and I was at work. And at night, I wouldn't really come back in there until like everyone kind of cleared out. And I would generally not want to sleep most of the time. So from like 8, 9 p.m. until like 3 in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning, I would generally just work and do stuff on the computer and make things happen and business plans and this and ideas and whatever it may be, and creating and trying and pushing and until it was time to make things happen. And just eventually things did, but like, it wasn't easy. I mean, it's the whole, you know, it takes a lot of years to make an overnight sensation. And like, when I finally got the success, when I finally got my dream and got to, you know, first was moving to Orlando and knew that the dream did come true and it was a reality. One of the coolest moments for me in my life was getting this letter from my dad, who just put it all out there and was like, man, just put out how much he envied me and how much he was proud of me. And while he never thought it was going to happen, and he was always telling me that, like, well, I once again, always supportive, but still in the reality world of it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. It's time to move on. Like, when are you going to realize it's time? And he just the coolest letter ever of like, man, you did it and you made it happen and you pushed forth, and it was just that those are those things. And anyone could do it, man. And it's not easy, and it's tough, and money's tough, and you need to make money to live and all that. But like, if you know what you want, you find a way to get it, and you find a way to go for it. And you also got to be realistic with yourself. So like, I knew I was good. Like that's what I could say. I knew I belonged there. Like, I've heard, and in my position, I've gotten plenty of calls, emails, videos from people who claim they want it, love it, and this is all they want, never want to do, and they don't walk the walk.
They don't actually fucking sacrifice.
Yeah, but if you want it and you work for it, you get what you want in your life, as long as you put in that work to make it happen. And believe me, there's no guarantee. So it's not the magical formula of be like, well, he said if I worked hard enough, it would happen. It hasn't happened. I get it, man. All those years I was grinding, and guess what? I'm going to be grinding again to figure out what my next adventure is and the next endeavor of my dream. I mean, I still got, maybe it's going to be another 12 years until I figure out how I'm going to get a game show host gig, but I'm going to be pushing, and I'm going to be trying to make that happen. And I'm going to be doing what it takes and creating content and networking and all of the things necessary. I remember I had a promoter friend. So with the CWO, one of the things that made the CWO interesting as a wrestling organization is it wasn't just me and Dan trying to put on a wrestling show. We were fortunate enough, and I was fortunate enough to start my journey in this business by working with a concert promoter named Dan Steinberg. And Dan kind of taught me, like, most wrestling promoters don't really promote. Like, you know, like we put up a flyer or we say we have a show and we quote fund a show, but there's no promoting. So I got to kind of learn the ropes from a concert promoter who did that professionally with some really cool bands and other variety acts. So like, now I lost my train of thought.
Well, listen, I will say this, like, you know, you've always stood out, and, you know, it's one of those things where, like, now you know it's fucking possible. Now it's like you were already crazy enough to keep pushing when everything said no. Like everything, like 50 times fucking somebody who was going to bring you in got fired. Like, and you kept pushing. And now you've actually had, like, shit, you were there for almost 10 years then, right? With
Eight and a half years there. There's a motivational speaker by the name of Les Brown. And I remember in some of my down times, I was actually in Colorado and I got to go to a seminar that he spoke at, and I didn't know him before that seminar, but I heard him speak at the seminar, and that one time always stuck with me. And he talked about as a young radio host, he wanted to get into radio, and he went into the station and tried to get a job, and they said no. So he went back the next day and tried to get a job and said no, and went back the next day and tried to get a job and said no, and kept coming until the guy said, dude, like, will you leave me alone? I'm not giving you a job. And he came back again and said no. And the guy said, what's it going to take for me to get you out of here? And it kind of was like, you got to give me a job. And he ended up getting a job. And essentially, and I probably butchered the story. It's probably not the accurate representation. But in the end, you're going to hear no over and 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 over again until you don't. And as long as you keep going, you always get the opportunity to get that yes coming. So like, you got to keep pushing and got to keep trying and got to keep making it happen.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, the other thing is I also remember when you it had to be probably 2013. I mean, you're generous too, because I remember you sending me a message like, dude, I'm at the Performance Center. We got to get some mace bells. You got to get in here. And I didn't jump on it. I should have, because I was so focused on my wrestling business. I had just like created the mace and I like took off, and I wasn't even aware how big the fucking thing had gotten. And so I'm just like in my little world, like me and Billy doing our fucking thing. And anyway, you're always very, very generous. And I very much appreciate that. You've had an incredible career, dude. I really love the whole message of pretty much everything you're saying. Like, take risks, fucking be obsessed with your shit. Like, if you want it to really fucking happen, you're going to have to do some fucking, like, you're going to have to really make it happen, because there's other people out there pushing, have better contacts, better connections, whatever. But if you just fucking do everything you possibly can, you can make the impossible possible. So with that, I'd like to know is the game show thing, is that the new impossible? Or like, I see you, dude, like I know you've done music and all that, and I'd heard it before, but like this stuff that you're doing right now, it really is fucking, it's really cool. I really am enjoying it.
Thanks,
like,
man.
What's the plan? What's the project?
So I definitely want to put out an album. It was something I've always wanted to do officially. And back in school at CU, was working on my demo. And this is actually how my wrestling career started, was after spending a few years with my buddy Luke, DJ Avalanche Infinity, my boy Quasi, our group Sixth Sense, we had put together our demo at the radio station. I used to work for our radio station. I ended up crashing the production computer and eliminating all of my masters, not just my masters. I actually eliminated like the radio stations, like master, like commercial file, like I did some major damage.
Oh fuck!
And at that point, I kind of gave up, to be honest. I was like years and years of like trying to put together this demo that we're gonna go shop. And I'll be honest, I like live performing. The grind of being in the studio and doing take after take. And then if it wasn't my take, but it was just them doing tune-up stuff on the production, but just being part of the team and being in there, like, I didn't love the environment back then. And also because it was at my school. So it wasn't like we were partying in the studio. Like, I'm in a university, like, production room. So like, it was pretty sterile.
Right.
So at that point I was like, I just spent so much of my time. This was actually post-graduation, the year later. I was like, I got to move on to the next phase of my career. And that's when I made the push for pro wrestling at that point. So like coming back to it, right before getting hired by WWE, so about 2011 and 2012 in LA, some opportunities came up. I found out some opportunities of getting involved and opening up for some of my favorite artists of all time. So I got to open up for...
Yeah, I remember that. Like what was it, KRS-One?
I got to open for KRS-One, who for me is
awesome.
is the greatest MC of all time, my absolute favorite hip hop influence. And I got to open up for him, and I got to open up for Digital Underground. And before that, actually in Santa Monica and also in Denver, I had opened up for Kurtis Blow, courtesy of my buddy, Mr. Neil, who lives in Hawaii and does rap for kids now and creating an amazing, amazing project out there, inspiring kids to find their voice and educate through entertainment, an amazing thing. So I ended up meeting KRS-One at that show, and it was one of the best moments of my life. So like, I had promoted a wrestling show a few weeks earlier at the Key Club at the same spot, and I had a DVD I made. So I brought it with me, and when I saw KRS, I kind of gave him my DVD, told him to check it out, and told him if he was interested in any work, he should hit me up. About a week later, I get a phone call, and I pick up the phone, and his booming voice was like, "Yo, is Smiley there?" And it was, and it's the voice is recognizable right away. And I was like, no way. He's like, it's KRS-One. And I ended up making some CDs and stuff for him and doing some replication work. And one of the coolest moments of one of those moments in my life, I ended up meeting him in the parking lot of a Ralph's, so of a grocery store parking lot out in the valley.
Ralph's are basically the King Supers of California.
Exactly. So we're sitting there out there in where am I? Woodland Hills at this point, at the Ralph's. And I meet up with KRS-One and give him a box of CDs, and he gives me like $1,000 of cash in the parking lot. And it was like, wow, my favorite rapper of all time just broke off a G for me. and like the coolest thing. So to say, rap's always been in me. So
you're very good. Like the ones that you posted on your social media are fucking
much appreciated. Let's go back because you brought up Thrasher. We're gonna bring this all together. My hip hop influence that got me into hip hop as when I was in elementary school was this gentleman by Dave Abrams. Dave Abrams is a cool ass dude who was a skateboarder, got me into all that stuff. But generally, if I did anything remotely cool, because I was always cool adjacent, I was never really cool, but I was still cool adjacent. Like I was friends with cool people and knew cool people and was around cool things. I just still had a little bit of dweeb in me, kind of thing. So Dave was cool. Dave went on to become DJ Solo and work for and was part of Soul Assassins, Cypress Hill, and DJ Muggs' little side DJ crew and stuff. But he was a big skater, had Thrasher, got me into my first Powell Peralta skateboard and all that stuff. But just bringing that up like full circle, hip hop influence that got me going, skateboard influence, all there. Anyways, I haven't been able to really do my thing and speak and perform for a lot of years. So while I've gotten to touch and help mold and sculpt and be a part of other people's lives, I feel my creative juice flow and outlet has been a little bit stifled for my own reasons. I had other priorities that needed to be worked on. And now it's time that I can go do my thing. And I like to say my little hashtag cat spitting fire, because it's time for me to just speak what's on my mind. And sometimes it's going to be something motivational. And sometimes it's just going to be a random story. Like I just put up this George of the Gorge, and I don't even know why I wrote it. It was like, it's ridiculous. The end of the song has me as like a little kid inspired by Slick Rick's children's story. And it happened to be his birthday the day I released the song, which I didn't know at the time, but well, that's how the world and the universe works. Cosmic. But like the last line is like, what does that even mean? And it's like, I don't even know I wrote this song, but I felt it, had to write it, and it just flowed. And I've been just spitting. And me and my buddy Rodney have been working on some tracks, and I think this summer we're gonna try to drop the album officially and make it happen. Put it on wax, put it on all the distribution outlets. And the hardest thing I think with doing the music right now isn't writing the music. It's in the day and age of today, like every song or everything you do needs a music video. And like, that's the time consuming part of it all. I think that's the work. That's the hustle. That's the making it happen. So I don't know that I'm going to go make a career out of being a rapper, but I'm going to absolutely take my hobby to the next level that I could. And maybe catch a little virility and hopefully some people like the tracks and they can catch on. You can catch them on my YouTube. You can catch them on my Instagram. You can catch them on my Facebook. You can catch them on my website.
Those. So if people, because I mean, believe it or not, we've been going for almost an hour, so we got to wrap. But and I'd love to have you back, dude, because you just got so much energy, but you got fantastic fucking stories, and it really is inspirational. So if people want to start following all the stuff that you're involved with and the future, and because really you are a force to be reckoned with, I'm pretty sure whatever crazy fucking thing that you put your mind to, you're gonna be doing it. So how do people follow you? What's the best?
You're generally going to find me on the Ryan is Smiley tag. So Instagram, Ryan is Smiley. I'm dropping ryanismiley.com within the next week or so. That'll kind of give you information of everything I'm going to be pursuing and putting down. And I'll give you maybe a final wrap up of that. YouTube is going to be YouTube/Ryan Katz. I believe they throw a C in there for channel /, but like Ryan Katz is how you'll find me on YouTube. Facebook is I Am Smiley. It was my original one from a lot of years ago, so we switched to Ryan Is, but blah, 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 blah. You could also then use the Ryan Katz tag on Pro Wrestling Tees and pick up a couple of my t-shirts. One is my style with the smile, but the one that I think applies to like this podcast and this show and the people who would listen here is my I Did It shirt. And I did it based off of Jay Robinson's wrestling camp. So back as an amateur wrestler, I went to Jay Robinson's camp. I only did the 14-day, not the 28-day, but did 14-day intensive in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And for any amateur wrestler, they generally know this is like the hardest wrestling camp in the country that's based off of Army Ranger School. And you're generally doing about 5-6 workouts a day, and it's no joke. So I created a little shirt that was kind of the I Did It learning tree, sports entertainment extreme training camp. And I think it just resonates of you're always under the learning tree. And if you believe in yourself, you know you can do it. You just got to say, I did it, and it's going to happen and be done. Finally, like I'm also going to launch on this website is going to be my creative consulting for pro wrestling, helping people with character development, helping people create their promos, helping people create their personas, whether it's just by writing and workshopping, whether it's through video interaction, whether it's through video production. I think I want to do what I can to help guide the next generation of talent to being undeniable. It's kind of my little thing is be undeniable. It's not always what you say, it's how you say it and the energy and the presence you have. And if you bring forth an undeniable presence, as the word states, you cannot be denied.
Yeah, dude, like that. You're a super talented guy, super like a dynamo of energy, which is great. But, you know, like I know that the talent that you have in all these other arenas, but in particularly helping people like you did with NXT, like you did through Dusty and carrying that work on, that is super valuable. So guys, stay in tune. This motherfucker's crazy. He really is crazy, but he's amazing. Ryan, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And I'm thrilled because, you know, like I'm friends with Shayna, for example, and I know, or Harry Smith back in the day, and I know how corporate WWE, they locked you guys down, you know, to protect the product and whatnot. So I'm just thrilled to actually have a chance.
I just remember when Shayna walked up to me once and was just like, you know Jake? Like, he was like, how do you know him? I was like, we started together.
Yeah, dude, crazy shit. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. And I wish you nothing but the best. And hopefully we can get together again before another 20 plus years.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
I see myself in Colorado for something sometime in the near future too. So we'll see.
We're going to hang out, dude. I'm going to need your help blowing some shit up because you are.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Out, bro. Guys, that was Ryan Katz. You got to watch this thing. If you just came in like halfway through or something, Ryan's a totally amazing guy. If I could be of any help with you guys, I'm always here, you know, and hit me up on the DMs or whatever. And next time, dude, I'm going to keep bringing in people. It's the #1 podcast talking about how people got to be #1 in their field. So thanks, guys. And we'll talk to you soon.